In the small town of Ravenswood, nestled at the edge of an ancient forest, there stood a peculiar old bookstore known as Grimshaw's Antiquities. Its owner, Mr. Grimshaw, was a reclusive figure with a reputation for dealing in rare and mysterious books that were said to hold arcane secrets. One stormy night, as thunder echoed through the cobblestone streets and lightning illuminated the sky, three friends, James, Lily, and Mark, sought shelter from the relentless downpour. They stumbled upon Grimshaw's Antiquities, its windows fogged and shelves stacked with dusty tomes that seemed to whisper ancient incantations. Intrigued and seeking refuge, they entered the dimly lit bookstore, where the air was heavy with the scent of old paper and secrets long forgotten. Mr. Grimshaw emerged from the shadows, his eyes gleaming with a curious intensity that made the hairs on their necks stand on end. He greeted them with a raspy voice, inviting them to browse his collection while the storm raged outside. James, the most adventurous of the trio, wandered toward a corner of the store where a particularly ancient-looking book rested on a pedestal, bound in cracked leather and clasped with a tarnished lock. Against Mr. Grimshaw's warnings, James couldn't resist the temptation. With trembling hands, he pried open the lock and began to leaf through the pages, filled with cryptic symbols and diagrams that seemed to shift and writhe as if alive. As he read aloud a passage that spoke of summoning spirits from the beyond, a cold wind swept through the store, extinguishing the flickering candles and plunging them into darkness. Panic surged through the group as they heard Mr. Grimshaw's frantic cries and the sound of shuffling footsteps all around them. Lily clutched Mark's arm, her voice trembling with fear as unseen whispers filled the air, urging them to leave before it was too late. But James, transfixed by the book's mysterious power, continued to read aloud, unaware of the malevolent presence awakening within the bookstore's ancient walls. Suddenly, a spectral figure materialized before them, a shadowy silhouette with glowing eyes and outstretched hands. Mr. Grimshaw's voice echoed from somewhere distant, warning them to flee, but it was too late. The entity's chilling laughter filled their ears as it reached out toward them, its touch like ice against their skin. In a desperate bid for escape, they stumbled over fallen shelves and crashed through the door, back into the stormy night. The bookstore vanished behind them, leaving only an empty storefront in its wake. As they huddled together in the rain-soaked streets, they dared not speak of what they had witnessed, for they knew that in the heart of Ravenswood, Grimshaw's Antiquities would forever remain a haunted place, where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred into darkness. As the three friends stood drenched in the rain, their hearts racing with fear and adrenaline, they struggled to make sense of what had just transpired in Grimshaw's Antiquities. The eerie laughter of the spectral entity still echoed in their minds, sending shivers down their spines. Lily, her voice quivering, managed to break the silence. "We shouldn't have gone in there. That place, it's cursed." Her eyes darted nervously toward the now darkened storefront where moments ago the mysterious bookstore had stood. Mark, trying to steady his own trembling hands, nodded in agreement. "I've never felt anything like that before. It was like we weren't alone in there." James remained silent, his mind still reeling from the forbidden knowledge he had glimpsed within the ancient tome. The words and symbols from the book danced in his memory, invoking a mixture of fascination and dread. Just as they debated whether to go back for answers or leave Ravenswood behind forever, a faint whisper carried on the wind, a voice they recognized as Mr. Grimshaw's. "Beware the book," it seemed to say, "for it holds more than mere words." They turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a haggard-looking Mr. Grimshaw, his eyes wide with urgency and a touch of madness. "You must listen," he implored, his voice ragged. "The book, it is a gateway. It calls to dark forces beyond our understanding." Before they could respond, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the street, tearing at their clothes and sending leaves swirling in a chaotic dance. The spectral figure from the bookstore materialized once more, its form flickering in and out of existence like a ghostly apparition. With a desperate cry, Mr. Grimshaw pushed them away from the storefront just as the entity lunged forward, its icy fingers grazing his shoulder. "Go!" he shouted, his voice strained with effort. Leave this place before it claims you too. Instinctively, they turned and ran, their hearts pounding with terror as they fled from Ravenswood, leaving behind the haunted bookstore and its mysterious owner. The storm continued to rage around them, as if nature itself mourned the darkness that had been unleashed. As they reached the outskirts of town, they dared to look back one last time. In the distance, Grimshaw's Antiquities stood silent and empty, a dark silhouette against the lightning-lit sky. They knew then that they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death, a fate entangled with ancient spells and spectral entities that should never have been awakened. From that day forward, James, Lily, and Mark carried the memory of Grimshaw's Antiquities like a shadow, a reminder of the thin veil between curiosity and peril, and the haunting reality that some mysteries are better left unsolved. And as for Ravenswood, it whispered tales of the bookstore that had disappeared overnight, leaving only whispered legends and cautionary tales to linger in its wake. Weeks passed since that fateful night in Ravenswood, but the memories of Grimshaw's Antiquities and the spectral entity haunted James, Lily, and Mark like a persistent nightmare. They tried to resume their normal lives, yet each night brought restless sleep, plagued by visions of shadowy figures and echoing whispers. James, in particular, found himself drawn back to the ancient tome he had glimpsed in the bookstore. Its cryptic contents continued to linger in his thoughts, beckoning him with an unsettling allure. Despite Mr. Grimshaw's warning and the terrifying encounter, a part of him yearned to uncover the secrets hidden within those forbidden pages. Lily and Mark, concerned for their friend's well-being, attempted to dissuade him from revisiting the bookstore or delving deeper into the mysteries that had nearly cost them their lives. They urged James to let go of his curiosity, to leave the dark past behind and focus on the present. But James couldn't shake the feeling that there was unfinished business, unanswered questions that gnawed at his mind like a relentless hunger. He began researching ancient texts and occult practices, seeking clues that might shed light on what they had encountered in Grimshaw's Antiquities. One evening, unable to resist the pull any longer, James ventured alone into the heart of Ravenswood. The streets were quiet, the air thick with an unsettling stillness as he approached the spot where the bookstore had once stood. To his surprise, there was no trace of Grimshaw's Antiquities, only an empty storefront, as if it had never existed. Determined to find answers, James scoured the town for any hint of Mr. Grimshaw or the whereabouts of the mysterious book. His search led him to a local historian who reluctantly shared tales of the Grimshaw family, rumored to have practiced dark arts centuries ago. According to the historian, Grimshaw's Antiquities had a history of appearing and disappearing throughout Ravenswood's long and storied past, leaving a trail of mystery and fear in its wake. As James delved deeper into the town's archives and whispered legends, he unearthed references to a ritual that could summon entities from beyond the veil, a ritual eerily similar to the one described in the ancient tome. The more he uncovered, the more he realized the perilous depths of the knowledge he sought. Meanwhile, Lily and Mark grew increasingly concerned for James's well-being, fearing that his obsession with uncovering the truth would lead him down a path from which there was no return. They pleaded with him to let go, to leave the mysteries buried in the past where they belonged. But James was consumed by a relentless drive, fueled by equal parts curiosity and dread. He knew the risks, yet he couldn't ignore the possibility that understanding the true nature of Grimshaw's Antiquities might offer a chance to confront the darkness that had threatened their lives. And so, under the cover of night, James returned to the spot where the bookstore had once stood, armed with newfound knowledge and a resolve tinged with apprehension. He stood before the empty storefront, steeling himself for what lay ahead, prepared to face whatever secrets and horrors awaited within the hidden realms of Grimshaw's Antiquities. Little did he know that his journey would lead him deeper into the shadows of Ravenswood, where ancient powers lurked and the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred with each step into the unknown. As James stood before the empty storefront of Grimshaw's Antiquities, a chill wind swept through Ravenswood, carrying with it whispers of caution and the faint echoes of distant laughter, the same chilling laughter that had echoed in the bookstore on that stormy night. Despite the ominous warnings and the growing unease in his gut, James couldn't turn back now. The mysteries of Grimshaw's Antiquities beckoned to him like a siren's song, drawing him deeper into the labyrinth of secrets that had ensnared his curiosity and his fear. With each hesitant step he took toward the spot where the bookstore had once stood, memories flooded his mind. The flickering candlelight, the musty scent of ancient books, and the unsettling presence that had materialized before them. He clenched his fists, steeling himself against the rising tide of apprehension. The moon cast an eerie glow over the cobblestone streets as James ventured into the heart of Ravenswood, guided by an instinct that defied reason. Shadows danced at the corners of his vision, whispering half-formed secrets and warnings that sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a hunched silhouette that shuffled toward him with a halting gait. James's heart skipped a beat as he recognized the worn features of Mr. Grimshaw, the enigmatic proprietor of Grimshaw's Antiquities. "Mr. Grimshaw?" James called out, his voice wavering with a mixture of relief and dread. The old man's eyes, once sharp and piercing, now bore the weight of centuries-old secrets and an unspoken sorrow. "You shouldn't have come back," Mr. Grimshaw rasped, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 whispered warnings. "The darkness within those walls, it hungers for those who seek to unravel its mysteries." James hesitated, torn between the allure of forbidden knowledge and the instinct to flee from the encroaching shadows. "I need to understand," he pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. "What happened that night? What did we awaken?" Mr. Grimshaw's gaze darkened, and for a fleeting moment, James thought he saw a flicker of remorse in those haunted eyes. "The book you found, it is a doorway to realms beyond mortal comprehension," he explained, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and resignation. "Long ago, my ancestors delved too deeply into the arcane arts, seeking power and knowledge they could not control. Grimshaw's Antiquities became a beacon for malevolent forces drawn to the whispers of ancient spells." A chill settled over James as he listened, his mind racing with the implications of Mr. Grimshaw's words. "Can it be stopped?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Grimshaw shook his head solemnly. "Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed," he replied, his tone heavy with remorse. "But there is one chance left, to seal the book and the darkness it harbors before it claims more souls." Together, James and Mr. Grimshaw ventured into the hidden depths beneath where Grimshaw's Antiquities had once stood, a forgotten catacomb of ancient relics and forbidden tomes. The air grew colder, thick with the presence of unseen forces that stirred in the darkness. At the heart of the catacombs, they found the ancient tome, its pages fluttering with spectral energy. With trembling hands, James reached for the book, the weight of its secrets pressing down on him like a leaden shroud. But as he prepared to seal the book and banish the darkness once and for all, a haunting whisper filled the chamber, a voice from beyond the veil, promising power and knowledge beyond imagining. James hesitated, torn between the allure of forbidden knowledge and the dread of unleashing an even greater horror upon the world. Sweat beaded on his brow as he wrestled with the decision that would shape the fate of Ravenswood and all who dwelled within its shadows. And in that moment of agonizing choice, the ancient tome pulsed with a malevolent energy, a final test of James's resolve and the price of delving into realms better left undisturbed. The fate of Ravenswood hung in the balance as James stood at the precipice of darkness, his hand trembling over the ancient tome that held the key to salvation or damnation. As James hesitated before the ancient tome, its pages fluttering with spectral energy, the voice from beyond the veil whispered louder, its promises of power and forbidden knowledge weaving through his thoughts like a seductive charm. Mr. Grimshaw, his features etched with concern and regret, urged James to resist the lure, to remember the horrors they had witnessed and the danger that lay in succumbing to the darkness. "You must seal it, James," Mr. Grimshaw urged, his voice echoing in the damp catacombs beneath Grimshaw's Antiquities. "The book is a gateway to horrors beyond imagining. Close it before it's too late." James wrestled with conflicting emotions, fear of the unknown, curiosity that burned like a relentless flame, and a profound sense of responsibility to protect Ravenswood from the malevolent forces that threatened to spill into their world. With a deep breath, James steadied his trembling hands and summoned every ounce of resolve he could muster. Gripping the ancient tome firmly, he recited the incantation Mr. Grimshaw had taught him, a spell of binding and banishment, woven from forgotten tongues and ancient glyphs. The catacombs trembled as James's voice reverberated through the chamber, the air thick with anticipation and the faint scent of ozone. The spectral energy within the book surged and writhed, resisting the spell's containment like a trapped beast yearning to break free. But James persisted, channeling his fear into determination, his every word imbued with the strength of his conviction. The tome grew still, its pages settling into an eerie calm as the incantation took hold, binding the malevolent energies and sealing the book's ancient secrets behind a barrier of protective magic. A profound silence fell over the catacombs, broken only by the sound of James's ragged breaths and the distant echoes of Ravenswood above. Mr. Grimshaw approached cautiously, his gaze fixed on James with a mixture of relief and solemn gratitude. "You've done it," Mr. Grimshaw murmured, his voice barely audible in the aftermath of their ordeal. "You've closed the gateway." James nodded wearily, his heart heavy with the weight of what they had faced and the choices they had made. "But for how long?" he wondered aloud, his gaze drifting toward the now-sealed tome. Mr. Grimshaw's expression darkened, the lines of age and weariness etched deeper into his features. "The darkness is persistent," he admitted gravely. "There will always be those who seek its power, who will try to breach the barriers we've erected." Together, they ascended from the catacombs, emerging into the cool night air of Ravenswood. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets and the quiet facades of the town's buildings. As they stood outside the now-vacant storefront of Grimshaw's Antiquities, James and Mr. Grimshaw exchanged a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged through their shared ordeal. The bookstore had vanished from Ravenswood, its physical presence erased, but its legacy lingered in the whispers of cautionary tales and the unspoken knowledge that some secrets were never meant to be unearthed. In the weeks and months that followed, life in Ravenswood gradually returned to normalcy. James, Lily, and Mark found solace in each other's company, their shared experience a bond that transcended the boundaries of ordinary friendship. Yet, beneath the surface of everyday life, James remained vigilant, knowing that the darkness they had encountered lurked in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to return. He kept a watchful eye on Ravenswood, prepared to face whatever challenges the future might bring. And so, the tale of Grimshaw's Antiquities faded into legend, a cautionary tale passed down through generations, a reminder of the fragile balance between curiosity and consequence, and the enduring struggle against the allure of forbidden knowledge. But deep within the recesses of Ravenswood, beneath layers of forgotten history and whispered secrets, the seal held strong, guarding against the malevolent forces that hungered for the power that lay beyond mortal comprehension. And there, in the heart of Ravenswood, the echoes of their journey lingered, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of ancient darkness and the enduring power of courage in the shadow of fear. As time passed in Ravenswood, life settled into a semblance of normalcy for James, Lily, and Mark. The memory of Grimshaw's Antiquities and the harrowing events they had experienced began to fade, overshadowed by the routines and distractions of everyday life. Yet, beneath the surface, James couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was not truly over. Nights were often restless for James, plagued by dreams of shadowy figures and whispers that echoed in the recesses of his mind. He found himself returning time and again to the sealed catacombs beneath Grimshaw's Antiquities in his dreams, haunted by the lingering presence of the ancient tome and the power it held within its pages. Lily and Mark, too, bore the scars of their encounter with the supernatural. Though they tried to move on, their bond forged in fear and survival bound them together in an unspoken understanding. They often found solace in each other's company, silently supporting James through his moments of unease and doubt. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and twilight cast long shadows over Ravenswood, a strange sensation washed over James, a prickling at the back of his neck, a whisper in the wind that stirred the hairs on his arms. Instinctively, he knew that something had shifted, that the lingering darkness they had sealed away was stirring once more. Unable to ignore the call of his unease, James set out alone into the quiet streets of Ravenswood, his steps guided by a sense of foreboding that refused to be ignored. The town seemed cloaked in an eerie stillness, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. He found himself drawn inexorably toward the spot where Grimshaw's Antiquities had once stood. A vacant storefront now, its windows dark and its facade weathered with age. The air around him hummed with a palpable energy, tinged with the faintest hint of ancient magic that sent a shiver down his spine. As James approached cautiously, he noticed a subtle disturbance in the air, an almost imperceptible ripple that seemed to emanate from the ground beneath his feet. It grew stronger with each step, a pulsing rhythm that resonated with the beat of his own heart. Suddenly, a soft glow began to emanate from the cracks in the cobblestones, casting a gentle radiance that illuminated the path before him. James's breath caught in his throat as he realized that the seal, once securely bound, was weakening, its magic strained by forces beyond comprehension. Heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination, James knelt before the cracked cobblestones, his hands trembling as he traced the ancient sigils and glyphs etched into the stone. The glow intensified, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls of nearby buildings, their shapes twisting and writhing like specters in the night. With a deep breath, James closed his eyes and focused his thoughts, channeling the remnants of the protective spell that had sealed the tome so many months ago. His mind raced with the incantations he had learned from Mr. Grimshaw, words of power and restraint that now held the fate of Ravenswood in their fragile grasp. But as he recited the spell, a faint whisper echoed in his mind, a voice that spoke of temptation and the promise of unearthly knowledge. James faltered for a moment, his resolve tested by the allure of what lay beyond the seal, the mysteries that had eluded him and taunted his curiosity. In that moment of hesitation, the glow beneath the cobblestones pulsed with renewed vigor, its radiance intensifying until it bathed James in a blinding light. Shadows converged around him, swirling in a chaotic dance that threatened to engulf him in their icy embrace. Desperate to regain control, James called upon every ounce of strength and courage he possessed, banishing the doubts that had clouded his mind. With a final surge of determination, he completed the incantation, the words resonating with clarity and purpose as he sealed the weakening barrier once more. Silence descended upon Ravenswood, broken only by the sound of James's ragged breaths and the fading echoes of spectral energy. He collapsed to his knees, exhausted yet relieved, the weight of his actions settling heavily upon him. As he looked up, James saw a figure standing in the shadows, a familiar silhouette that emerged from the darkness with a solemn expression. It was Mr. Grimshaw, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and sorrow. "You've done well, James," Mr. Grimshaw murmured, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and regret. "But remember, the darkness is relentless. Vigilance will be your greatest ally." With those cryptic words, Mr. Grimshaw disappeared into the night, leaving James alone with his thoughts and the knowledge that their battle against the darkness was far from over. And so, as dawn broke over Ravenswood and life resumed its ordinary rhythm, James, Lily, and Mark stood united in their resolve to protect their town from the ancient evils that lurked in the shadows. Together, they would remain vigilant, guardians against the unknown and defenders of the fragile balance between light and darkness. For in the heart of Ravenswood, the echoes of their journey reverberated, a testament to the enduring power of courage, friendship, and the unyielding spirit of those who dared to confront the mysteries that lay beyond the veil.